Welcome to the 3 Knockdown Rule. Starring Mario Lopez and Steve Kim. Presented by Hustler Casino.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 3 Knockdown Rule brought to you by Hustler Casino is in effect. I'm Steve Kim, joined by Mario Fahrenheit Lopez. Hot out there.
Telling me. I'm drinking alone now. Kim's whack now. I don't know why. I will explain that in the flurries later. Shout out to Smoking Tim Frazier and
Tino on the edits, the bout sheet for this victory. Bonsai Inoue is back and joining us on the championship hotline, previewing the pay-per-view show this weekend in Las Vegas from ppv.com, the great Jim Lampley. And we talk about UFC 306 at the Spear, and we also have Final Flurries. But first, we want to let you know this podcast is sponsored by Hustler Casino. Beat the congestion and enjoy free parking every day at Hustler Casino. Introducing So Fine Sundays, where every Sunday you can win tons of cash with drawings every 2 hours from 12 noon to 8 p.m. Stop by and see how big you can win at Hustler Casino.
Round 1.
All right, resuming. Round number 1. We missed it last week, but we talk about it now. September 3rd at the Ariake Arena in Japan. Once again, undisputed junior featherweight title was on the line, and it was the monster Naoya Inoue with a knockout in 7 against TJ Doheny. Mario, some people are a little bit critical of this performance. Do you think people are being a little bit too hard on him?
Yes, it's sort of like when Mike Tyson was going through his terror. If he wasn't knocking everybody out, then they thought he was starting to fall off, or maybe the hype wasn't deserved. No, that's not the case. He's incredibly special. He is probably one or in the top 3 of pound-for-pound fighters. And what I love about him is, as special and as talented as he is, he's been quite active by today's standards. This is his what?
Fourth fight since last July.
Look at that. That's crazy.
And he's coming back December 24th.
Yes. So that right there, we should really take a moment to appreciate, because to have a star, you need to be able to have showcases where he's featured and people can know him, relate to him, and have something to cheer for. He has been the most active star in the sport, I would say. Right? By far. And I truly hope he's finally coming to the States. I think it'll even take it to another level, which looks like the case. But I thought his performance was fine. Yeah, what did he take him out in the 7th round, was it?
7th round. He may have lost 1 round.
Yeah, we're getting way too meticulous right here. It's almost like if you don't perform your last good performance, you're just judged on that, and then you shouldn't be judged on anything else. And meanwhile, he's playing his trade, continuing to get better, and there's not much room for even. He's already pretty much. He's well skilled. He's always well prepared. He's got power. He's got speed. He's fundamentally sound. There's not much. Look, it's boxing. You're gonna get hit once in a while. Look what happened with Neri. He got caught, came back, answered that. He shows character. I can't find too many holes in his game.
When you talk about Mike Tyson, I remember during the Tyson phenomenon, the criticism he took when Bone Clutcher Smith held his way for 36 minutes. Then Tony Tucker gave him a tougher than expected fight. Mario, here's the difference. He actually stopped him in round 7 in a way. And in TJ Doheny, and I know there has been some criticism over why is he fighting this guy. Well, let me just put it to you this way. You want to talk about standards. The standards you set for somebody is what you really think of them. TJ Doheny is a former world champion who is still rated 7th in this division, who had won a series of fights, and it's been a couple of years since he lost. I have a question to all those critics. Do you hold your same favorite fighters up to that same standard? Probably not.
It's bizarre to me. But I thought Inoue looked great. I always look forward to seeing him fight. And anytime I know he's going to perform, I'll be there watching.
You know what I didn't also understand? He's gun shy after the Neri fight. Wait a minute. Hold on. So he's not allowed to make adjustments unless he's going out there like a kamikaze with his face first, hands down. You're telling me that's constitutes being gun shy. Mm-hmm. Doesn't that constitute actually having a boxing IQ and some ring intelligence?
Yeah, I think the intelligence is lacking sometimes in some of these people that are viewing these fights.
Mario, big news afterwards. Bob Arum said that not only would Inoue be fighting December 24th, and probably going to be Sam Goodman, one of his mandatory defenses. This is the news I think makes a lot of people, starting with me, very happy. He is going to have an appearance in America like Prince Hakeem and Simi. He's coming to America, and on the undercard is going to be Junto Nakatani as they start to begin to set that showdown.
Well, that's one of the fights I'm looking forward to now. That's on my Mount Rushmore of fights that I really want to see. I love that he's coming here. I think his star is going to continue to rise. I hope Nakatani continues to have great performances, and we build that fight to what it deserves to be. And I think it'll be one of the best little guy fights we've seen in a long time when it eventually happens.
Mario, I'd clear off your calendar. I want to make a prediction right now. When they announce this fight for America, should he win on December 24th, it'll be one of the hottest tickets and biggest events stateside in boxing in 2025. And the reality is it'll probably be the last chance to see this guy in America. Keep that in mind.
Yeah, no rumblings of where it would take place, huh?
Probably Las Vegas. Remember, they have casino money, and the Japanese whales, they are going to flock to it like really no other event before. Mario, real quickly before we get to Jim Lampley, Canelo Berlanga. Is there any shot of an upset here this upcoming Saturday in your view?
No. I don't think there's any shot. I can't believe how mouthy really Berlanga's been, and I think the disrespect has motivated Canelo to even be that much more well-prepared. Look, he's a big guy. He's a heavy-handed guy. Obviously, it's a fight. Anything could happen. But we've seen Canelo handle much more difficult opposition, and I think it should be a nice showcase for him, which will end in a spectacular knockout or stoppage.
It would actually feel like a loss if the final bell is heard. Okay,
yes,
and I'm going to say this.
I agree with that.
I don't even believe Berlanga is among the top 20 or 25 fighters on the resume of Canelo. Now, Mario, I've said this before, but coming into the Virgil Ortiz fight with Sergey Bohachuk, I knew a lot of boxing insiders and matchmakers that said, Steve, that's a real fight. Don't be surprised if it's an upset. Madrimov against Crawford, those same people that I trust, gamblers, players, they said, Steve, putting some money there on Madrimov.
You haven't heard that buzz.
I haven't heard one word. I'm still looking for a guy that's not either Puerto Rican from New York, not from the island, or that is with Team Berlanga, or maybe even Eddie Hearn. Look, when Eddie Hearn was in this seat, did he look like a guy really selling his guy on a victory? Be honest.
He didn't look too confident. Outside of Fat Joe, I don't think too many people are willing to put money on that. Look, according to his IG and videos on social, he looks big, strong, and well-prepared, but there's levels to this game, and we'll see that.
And I'm just speaking
Saturday.
of Fat Joe, they're all going to lean back on Saturday. My prediction is TKO round number 7. All right, we come back. Joining us on the championship hotline is the great Jim Lampley on the 3 Knockdown Rule, brought to you by Hustler Casino.
Streaming live right on YouTube.
Welcome to the big leagues, kid.
$1.2 million.
And I'm losing in this fucking game. What the fuck?
There's a 400K flip. If I win by the way, you get 10 grand.
Fucking straddle!
For my fans!
What? I read it twice! Wow! All in a call.
I'm not fucking leaving!
Raise it up.
All right, joining us right now on the championship hotline on the 3 Knockdown Rule, a man that'll be there this weekend in Las Vegas at the T-Mobile Arena, Jim Lampley of pay-per-view, ppv.com. Jim, you are going to be working the Canelo Berlanga fight. Lots to talk about here, but here's the question. There's been a lot of criticism over this particular matchup of Saul Alvarez. What are your general feelings about this particular fight?
Well, I've probably done a dozen Zooms, and virtually every one of those Zooms begins with a question about how disappointed should we be that this is who Canelo is fighting, and that he isn't fighting, take your pick, David Benavidez, David Morrell, even the smaller Terrence Crawford. So I think that indicates that most people, yes, find this to be perfunctory, not likely to produce great competition, and something less than what we might have hoped for if he had chosen to fight Benavidez, Morrell, or even the smaller Terrence Crawford.
Now, I think what makes it even more, I don't know if alarming is the right word, but I guess puzzling, disappointing is that the UFC is getting into this very popular weekend for boxing, Mexican Independence Day, of course, and they're having the first event at the Sphere, first combat event of any sport. And so I think because it's going head to head with the UFC, I think fight fans, in particular boxing fans, I think are very disappointed it wasn't the names you just mentioned, to which I say, I feel Canelo deserves a little grace because of his past fights. Floyd, Triple G, Trout, Lara, Bivol, Kovalev, all these guys, he's really got the best resume out there, hands down, no question, at least in my eyes. Do you think that should be taken into account, Jim?
Triple G 3 times, by the way.
Yeah.
I think there's an enormous tendency, because he is the biggest star in the sport right at this moment. There's an enormous tendency for those of us on the media side to put pressure on him and demand of him that he carried the sport, sort of the way Oscar did back in the middle of Oscar's career, when he took big fight after big fight after big fight, because it was clear in an underlying way that the sport needed it. And he needed to be carrying the sport in a way that the heavyweights weren't at that time. I'm not surprised. And I think that Canelo shows, how do I say it? Public calm in a big way by not kicking back and pushing back against all of this very often. Sometimes he'll make a comment to the effect that, exactly what is it that people want. But by and large, he goes about his business. He fights the opponents who seem most logical at the time, right up until this moment. And now he does this. Now, every great fighter in the history of the sport has had a few nights off. I don't care whether you're talking about Joe Louis, who fought the Bum of Monk Club, by the way, Sugar Ray Robinson, and any number of stars that I can name for you. Roy Jones, my beloved close friend, all of them have taken fights for money or to stay busy, or for their own purposes, for whatever reason that the public might not have been all that anxious to see them take. And as Steve, your friend and mine, Larry Merchant, would say, maybe in response to this, when this one looked good the next time, he usually says that when a fighter is fighting at a little bit less than maximum capacity. But at the end of the day, it's pretty much the same premise. He's going to go into the ring. Not a lot of people were desperate to see him fight Berlanga. He's fighting Berlanga. He's still Canelo Alvarez. He's still the number one attraction in the sport. So are you going to turn it on or not? I think most boxing fans are going to turn it on.
Jim, to your point, though, when you talk about the bum of the month or the stay busy fight, when you are a fighter that only fights twice a year, there is an expectation, because let's face it, the days of most guys taking on 4 or 5 fights, I think most people would say, okay, well, this is kind of an off fight. It's kind of an off night, off Broadway. I think that there is an expectation, given the fact that Canelo does get paid a lot, and quite frankly, he's probably worth it. Here's my question. Moving forward after this night, if the expected takes place, we turn the calendar to 2025. Just your opinion, Jim. Do you think he ever does face David Benavidez?
I don't know. I wish I knew Canelo Alvarez well enough and had enough time talking to him away from the ring to be able to answer that question. But I haven't spent as much time with him as I spent with various other fighters, Oscar De La Hoya, Lennox Lewis, Mike Tyson even. I spent a lot of time with other fighters of a quality and an abundance that has not been the case with Canelo, even though I lived about a mile from him in Del Mar, California, and used to bump into his senior trainer, Chepo, at the grocery store many times and saw him a few times out and about in Del Mar. But by and large, I'm not buddy-buddy with Canelo. I don't know him as well as I've known some other fighters. Fernando Vargas is another one whom I knew very well and could have asked any question because of the nature of my personal relationship with him. I just don't feel that at liberty to push Canelo on a subject like that when I'm not in the media room. When I push him in the media room, I get the same answers that he gives to everybody else.
I don't think he ever fights Benavidez. I think that ship has sailed once he went to 175, and I don't think Benavidez is coming back down.
In the eyes of some people, that will diminish him. Not a lot. He's still Canelo Alvarez, but I think that there are a lot of people in and around the sport who want him to fight David Benavidez and want to think that it is in some way his responsibility to do so. It's never his responsibility to do that. He's a professional fighter. The occupation observes an enormous amount of risk. Whoever it is he doesn't want to fight, that's his right and his privilege. But I'm not surprised that fans are disappointed in some instances, and I'm not surprised that some people will criticize him for it.
I say that, by the way, I should have prefaced it only because of the weight jump. Had he remained or was able to remain at 168, then I agree that the pressure, and I think it would hurt his legacy, and I think all of the things you mentioned. But because of the weight jump, he was already a big guy, talented, skilled. We've discussed all that. But I think now for sure he's not going to fight him. But that's just me. I think more likely a Terrence Crawford scenario will probably prove to come to fruition. Do you think that salvages any of his of this discussion as far as him being an all-time great, Jim?
No, I don't think great as Terrence Crawford is because he has fought his career between 130 and 147 and now had one fight at 154. I don't think the boxing public, by and large, sees him as a fully qualified opponent for Canelo, even at 168, much less at 175. And Canelo might wind up there. So at the end of the day, I don't think there's any way that Canelo completely escapes some fan resentment and media criticism if he chooses never to fight Benavidez. Because let's face it, the man on the street, unqualified as he is to make judgments of this nature, the man on the street says, "Hey, it's only 7 pounds. What are you talking about here? You know, you're cutting the apple too fine that way. 7 pounds, you know, and I know, makes a significant difference in the careers of extremely well-trained, physically refined prize fighters. But the man on the street doesn't see it that way."
Is that opinion regarding Crawford because of his performance versus Madrimov, or you felt that way regardless, Jim?
Well, I felt that way regardless. And I know that some people were disappointed by or unimpressed by his performance against Madrimov. At the end of the day, again, you win this fight and look good the next time. It was his first time at 154 pounds. Madrimov is not without credentials. He's a well-trained Eastern European high-technique fighter. It didn't shock me that there was a little bit of a struggle going on there for Terrence. I think the next time Terrence fights at 154, he'll look better. And maybe because the opponent will be less than what Madrimov was. At some point, he might fight Madrimov again, just to hammer home the point for his own satisfaction, knowing that some people diminished him after that outing.
Yeah, I think August 1st, Mario, was confirmation. It was visual confirmation that Crawford is still a welterweight who's still at least 2 weight classes from Canelo. Jim, going back to the card on Saturday, looking at the undercard, it's the return of Caleb Plant against Trevor McCumbee. Erislandy Lara takes on the returning Danny Garcia and also Rolly Romero. What on this undercard particularly piques your interest?
Erislandy Lara against Danny Garcia. I will confess, having been away from the sport for 5 years, not following it as closely as I used to, I was mildly shocked to see that they are still fighting and that they are still programmable at this level. Would have been a really interesting fight back in the day. Maybe it'll be a really interesting fight this time. So I'm looking forward to seeing Erislandy Lara and Danny Garcia.
Yeah, the last time you were on with us, or a couple of appearances ago, you said that David Benavidez one day will be a great heavyweight, a star that's going to make tens of millions of dollars. After his fight with Alexander Gvozdyk in his light heavyweight debut, have you adjusted that projection at all?
I should, but I haven't had a public opportunity to eat crow and pull it back. And I'll say only this about that. Was his first time at 175. Wasn't Gvozdyk's first time at 175. And Gvozdyk is a long-armed, well-trained, high technique Eastern European fighter with a long background of training to the max to get ready for fights, etc. So it didn't really surprise me all that much that Benavidez didn't score a sensational knockout against Alexander Gvozdyk. Is Benavidez still in the back of his mind, nursing the ambition to become a heavyweight fighter? I think he is. I'm pretty sure he is. And if he became a heavyweight fighter, would he have the opportunity to create spectacle and make a great deal of money? Yes, I believe that's still the case. So I'm not going to rain all over my own parade just because of one fight and the fact that David Benavidez did not exactly storm through Alexander Gvozdyk. A lot of 175-pound fighters would have trouble with Gvozdyk.
I agree with you. And ironically, much like Crawford, who was going up in weight, they both had very solid, talented opponents that they faced. These guys, well experienced, pardon me, champions in their own right. So yeah, it takes a minute to adjust to these new weight classes, no matter how talented you are. So I'm not frowning on either of them. I thought both of them looked good in their debuts. I think people are expecting a lot, and the expectations and you put out there, if it's anything less, then people think they're slipping or maybe they're not up to task. I want your thoughts on a fight that I've been looking forward to now for a couple of years. It's finally going to come to fruition right around my birthday, which is nice, a day after. And I'm looking forward to seeing Bivol finally step in the ring with Artur Beterbiev. Your thoughts on the fight and who you like?
They were contemporaries in the Russian amateur program for quite a number of years. I'm sure there are a lot of people back in Russia who've been waiting to see when Dmitry would go into the ring against Artur. And obviously it's Dmitry's consummate boxing skill and craft against Beterbiev's pulverizing power. And I think that those adjectives are all well-deserved. Beterbiev does have pulverizing power in both hands from what I've seen. Mm-hmm. And Bivol is a consummate boxer who is capable of tremendous defensive performances. So who do you favor in a fight like that? Who do you traditionally favor in a fight like that? It's almost always not what the heart-racing spectators want to see. It's usually the craftsman, the technician, who is able to make the fight go his way. So by a not overwhelming margin, I tend to favor Bivol against Beterbiev.
It's interesting because I've always favored Beterbiev, not just because of his power, but I feel he's underrated with his skill. I think he's incredibly crafty himself. I think he's well skilled. He just happens to have incredibly heavy hands with his 100% knockout ratio. And I was feeling really confident about it when this fight was originally announced, but then he got hurt. And now there's a delay. And now he's been out of the ring for I don't know how long. Bivol has had a fight or two in there. And I think now it makes it really interesting. And it makes it very, very even. Had they fought originally when planned, I was feeling very confident about my Beterbiev pick. Now,
are you waffling?
Well, not so.
Are you waffling?
Because of the circumstances, I'm not feeling so sure. Does that make sense?
That makes sense to me. And I'll just say one more thing. I have sat in the room with Bivol. I've had conversations with him. I've talked to him about things other than boxing. I think he's a winner. I think he is a really large-minded, intelligent person who can think his way through a lot of situations. And I just have a hunch. I could be wrong, but I have a hunch that he's going to find a way to outfox Artur Beterbiev.
I'm a fan of his too, by the way. To not disparage Bivol, I like him a lot too. It's just two contrasting styles that I'm looking forward to see.
I agree with you, Jim. In the sense that Bivol,
it's a truly great fight. I wish there were more American fight fans who could genuinely appreciate what that fight is all about and what an amazing style contrast it is.
Right.
Well, thankfully, Turki Al-Sheikh and his people are funding it, or else we wouldn't be seeing it. But I will say this about Bivol. He has a winky right quality to him in a sense that, against C and B level guys, he's that Prius that sits at the middle of the lane going 55 miles per hour. He coasts to victory, and it's very, very frustrating. But against the elite guys, he turns into a Lamborghini, and he shifts gears. This will be one of those fights, in my view, that he will turn into a Lamborghini. Jim, in a couple of weeks, a huge event, and I think there's going to be almost 100,000 people because they're opening up seats. At Wembley Stadium, Anthony Joshua is taking on Daniel Dubois. Jim, am I out of line when I say it's the biggest all-British heavyweight fight since Lennox Lewis, Frank Bruno?
Biggest all-British fight since Lennox Lewis, Frank Bruno. Well, yeah, Vladimir Klitschko was not a Brit. I think you can say that. I think it's the biggest boxing event in the UK, obviously, since Klitschko versus Joshua in Wembley Stadium. That was one of the great, great memories of my life because after that amazing ring walk when Joshua got up into the ring and turned around and looked outward at the crowd and scanned all the way around with his eyes just to sort of pat himself on the back for what he had done in terms of drawing a crowd. I sat down in my position at ringside. The last thing I did before the bell rang for round one was to turn and look over my shoulder. And Lennox Lewis and Evander Holyfield were seated behind me at the table behind me. And I thought, oh my God, I have the best seat in the world tonight, and I'm in front of Lennox and Evander. So it is fun to know that another crowd of that type is likely to show up again, and that Joshua has a chance to add yet another credential to his dossier in front of 95,000 British fans.
You've often had the best seat in the world, Jim, for many years, which is awesome.
I definitely had the best seat for a long, long time.
Yeah. While we're on Joshua, and then I want to go back really quick. I love the way he sort of, I guess, resurrected himself from the Andy Ruiz first fight. He's really done a good job of sort of not letting that psychologically damage him. He's been very active. He had the one novelty fight, even with Ngannou, where he looked great. He's really, I think, turned his career around. And is that more due to just mindset, activity, combination, new approach? It just shows the sort of character that he truly has. Do you think, Jim?
I wish I knew him well enough to specifically answer you as to which one of those elements was critical in creating that turnaround. The only thing I'll say about it, because this is all I know, is he's a very bright person. He's not a big lug who just has a huge body and a big punch. He's a thoughtful, intelligent person, and he probably realized as much as anybody that he had let himself down, and that is what had led to the, to me, shocking loss to Ruiz. And I'm happy for him that he has turned it around and come back from that to once again become Anthony Joshua, with all that I think that entails.
Mario, I think everything you talked about, I think it's a piece. I think everything mattered in that, but I think activity was important in a sense that he won his championship so early, and he was selling out stadiums before his 20th fight. And Eddie Hearn explained to me, his promotions became so big, he became a twice-a-year fighter, and people forget he started boxing late.
Right.
So it's not like he was one of these Cubans with 300 amateur fights. He was a relative novice, found a soft spot in Charles Martin, and I think the last year or so, he got some of those developmental rounds that he needed. And I'll say this again, there's nothing in life that you do less and you get better at. Activity will always matter.
And it mattered for him.
Yeah.
And it showed.
I think that's a brilliant comment and says a lot about how much you know about sport. And I tend to agree with you that that's a lot of what happened there. But again, I wish I knew Anthony well enough now at this point in his career that I could have that conversation with him and learn more.
I just want to go back to Bivol really quick. Let's assume he wins and he looks good in doing it. Where do we put him in this mythical pound for pound? Because he's beaten Canelo, he's beaten Beterbiev. Is he number 2 after Usyk?
Yeah, he's in the Fab Five now. He breaks into that upper.
He's in the Mount Rushmore.
So Usyk, Crawford.
I think I put him above Crawford. If you're beating Canelo and you're beating Beterbiev, who's got, I mean, where do you rank? What's your Mount Rushmore?
Well, he could be, look, you could make a case for him as number 1, but Usyk is still unbeaten, so he gets that nod. But it's not, it's not a rout. It's a fairly close call. Crawford is in that discussion. Canelo is in that discussion. And Bivol is in that discussion too. So there are a number of fighters who are in that discussion. And of course,
in a way,
get into that discussion.
In a way, too, that young man.
Yeah, in a way, even though he had a disappointing outing the last time, most people see him as number 2 or 3 or number 1. I mean, I can't remember, frankly, between you and me, I can't remember a moment in time when it was more difficult to sort out your top 5 pound for pound and be certain that you're right.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Jim, we wrapped up the Summer Olympics about, 4 or 5 weeks ago. You are certainly no stranger to Olympic coverage. You were at the desk where many of these covered many of those events. Is there a particular Olympic memory where you were part of the coverage that sticks out in your mind?
An Olympic memory where I was part of the coverage?
Yes.
Oh, there are a lot of them. I was just writing about this in my book. It Happened, that will be coming out in the early part of 2025. And
great.
I'll be getting that.
Yeah, I'll be reading that. What are 3? Let's hear 3.
Yeah, give me your top 3.
Complimentary copies of It Happened.
Oh, thank you.
The very first Olympic event I ever attended was in Innsbruck, Austria, in February of 1976. It was the very first competitive event of the Innsbruck Games, the downhill ski race.
Yeah, the winter
on Patrick Kofel Mountain. And that day, the Austrian superstar Franz Klammer skied the greatest and most dramatic downhill run in the history of his sport. And by such a margin that there's no plausible argument that any other downhill run ever was as, number one, as exciting, as thrilling, as technically skilled, and as heart-poundingly unforgettable as what happened that day. And number two, it shifted the economic fulcrum between two nations in a way that probably no other Olympic event could ever have done, because, of course, Klammer and Bernhard Russi of Switzerland were huge components in their country's economies due to all of the income they brought in via skiing every year. The money that was sold, or the money that was collected from selling skis, selling gloves, selling clothing, selling boots, et cetera, all that depended on the success of the World Cup skiers. So when Klammer went down the mountain and eclipsed Russi to win that gold medal, he shifted tens of millions of dollars from Switzerland to Austria. And he knew that. He was aware of it at the time. That was still to this day a thunderous memory. Now, let me point out that I was also in the building in Lake Placid for the last two periods of the Miracle on Ice,
Oh,
preparing to do a post-game interview. So let's make it a draw between the Miracle on Ice and Kilometers Downhill, and then I could name you another 100 or so before we got finished if you wanted to go on all night.
wow.
The Miracle on Ice was interesting because living in Valencia, California, that was actually tape delayed in L.A. And in the age of social media, it would have been a surprise. And as a kid, I remember watching it. Can we go on here?
Everywhere, okay? There was nowhere other than in that building where you watched that event live, and I was in there. I watched it live.
Jim, could you?
That was Tyson Douglas, but
The way it was because they played an exhibition game, Mario, about a month before at the Garden, and the Russians had like their second team, and they only won 10-3.
Wow.
They could have won 20-3.
Yeah.
Okay. They went easy on the Americans, and they beat them 10-3. And still, Herb Brooks had it in his head that his team could win that gold medal. And they did.
Could you feel the momentum in the let's say around the second period that this was going to be a little bit different than that exhibition game at the Garden?
Well, at the end of the first period, Mark Johnson managed to get to a loose puck in the Soviet end and poked the puck under the mitt of Vladislav Tretiak, the greatest goalie arguably in the history of the sport. And that's when Tikkanen, the Russian coach, got furious at Tretiak and pulled him from the game, putting in their far lesser skilled substitute goalie, Anatoly Mishkin. So the game turned on one of the most bizarre coaching decisions of all time.
I love your memory of these details. I know. I was like, damn, he remembers the Russians, the backup goalie.
Yeah.
Like, wow, it's amazing.
Only I remember is Grant Fuhrer.
That's amazing.
So, Jim, we're leaving on this. I'm going to put you on the spot.
By the way, I can hear the rest of your top 100, by the way.
Yeah, well, we get the book.
We're going to get the book.
Get the book.
Which is complimentary to me, not you.
Oh, get out of here. So, Jim, final question. What's the bigger upset? What's the one that's a little bit ahead of the other? Tyson Douglas or that one? You're in the building for both.
Definitely the Miracle on Ice is the bigger upset.
Oh, wow.
Tyson Douglas, massive upset. But look at what Tyson had done prior to Tyson Douglas. He went the distance with Bone Crusher Smith. He went the distance with Mitch Blood Green. He went the distance to the last 10 seconds with Jose Ribalta. He had several occasions on which you could see that he was not as dominant against taller fighters who had a jab, a little footwork, and could bring the right hand over the top as he was against other fighters like the ones that he was knocking out left and right. And by the way, of all those names I've just mentioned, which one was the best athlete? Buster Douglas. He had been a college basketball player. So it's not as shocking an upset as most people make it out to be.
Yeah, and also Frank Bruno in their first fight buzzed them early on in that fight. People forget about that. There were signs of vulnerability coming into that. Then he blew out Carl Williams in a fight.
Several signs of vulnerability. Like I said, Mitch Blood Green, how do you explain that?
And they got a fight in the street, remember?
Yeah.
They got in a fight.
Guys who were taller and could move a little bit. Mike was not a world beater.
Remember that?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Jim, maybe we'll see a big upset this Saturday because Berlanga, quite frankly, is a very heavy underdog. Again, TPV.com. Jim Lampley will be on the scene. He'll have interviews. He'll have discussions with various people in the fight game, working very hard. So, Canelo Berlanga, TPV.com this Saturday night from the T-Mobile Arena in Viva, Las Vegas. As always, Jim, thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. You're the best.
See you later, guys.
Take care, buddy.
All right, we'll be back with more of the 3 Knockdown Rule brought to you by Hustler Casino. All right, and we're back on the 3 Knockdown Rule brought to you by Hustler Casino. And folks, are you looking to get involved with 3KR and sponsor our fine program? We still have some spots available. Please email info@boxbid.io. Once again, that's info@boxbid.io. BoxBid is an online platform that helps professional boxers connect with their fans by providing exclusive Fight Week merchandise, memorabilia, and sponsorships. You can even buy a shout-out on BoxBid. BoxBid.io handles our sponsorships, and we are proudly working with BoxBid.io.
News and notes.
All right, news and notes. We're going to switch gears a little bit. Mario, Saturday, that Canelo fight is taking place at the T-Mobile Arena, but you will not be there. You'll be in town, but you're going to be at the Sphere for UFC 306.
Noche at UFC, yes. The first combat event to ever take place at the Sphere. And it's going to be quite an event. There's a movie, I guess, that's essentially playing throughout the event during the fights.
You mean over the walls?
With all through the walls. If you haven't been there, it's pretty incredible, honoring the great Mexican fighters of the past, a lot of which are boxers. I would say even most. And so he's going to be honoring Chavez. He's going to be honoring Canelo, ironically. And there's going to be, I believe, a bit of a performance, a show. I don't know if it's Eminem or something, but it's more than just a fight. It's just that, a huge event that's going to be happening. And the Sphere itself is reason enough to want to attend or to want to sort of tune in. I was lucky enough to be at the opening night when U2 performed there, and it's pretty spectacular. So I'm looking forward. I'm interested to see how the setup's going to be, but I'm going to get there early and check it out. I got to rush back. Next day are the Emmys, so I got to rush back that night. It'll be quite the weekend. Wish me luck.
What's the main event that night?
The main event is between Sugar Sean O'Malley and Merab Dvalishvili. Hope I'm pronouncing his name right. A guy from Georgia and a guy from Florida. And the country.
Yes.
The country, correct. And a wrestler, pretty much this incredible wrestler versus this guy who's a really good striker. It's a nice contrast of styles. It's a really good fight. There are Mexicans on the card. We've got Brian Ortega in a really good fight with Diego Lopez, which is a great fight. And there's a few others. So it's, all the cards are always stacked. It's like NFL Sunday, like we talked about. But it's really about the Sphere, which is costing lots and lots of money. His Excellency, Turkey, the Sheikh will be there. It's part of Riyadh season.
And so will Oscar De La Hoya. Here's my question. Will you be sitting in between Dana and Oscar, keeping the peace?
When Oscar told me, I was like, okay. Because he's been pretty vocal on his feelings towards Dana. And
Canelo. He's clapping back at him daily.
That's the thing is I think just to spite and to sort of rub, I guess, in Canelo's face, he's going to be attending this event as a guest of Turkey's, the Sheikh. Sheikh, pardon me if I'm mispronouncing that.
Allah Sheikh.
Allah Sheikh, yes. So as a guest of his. So I don't know where my seats are yet, but that should be pretty interesting the whole way it's gonna go down. But yeah, man, it's gonna be the place to be, and I'm gonna catch up on Canelo later on.
Final flurries.
All right, final flurries. Mario, let me ask you something. If you state something on Twitter that if a certain team loses or wins, you're going to do this, does that mean that you are now bound? Because a couple of weeks ago, there's a guy that's an infamous Florida State fan. I think he goes by the handle 321 Noel, said if Florida State does not beat Boston College coming off this loss to Georgia Tech, I will eat dog crap out of a red Solo cup. He became famous last Monday. He started the trend. There's now a manhunt for this guy. Does he need to pay his debt?
He hasn't resurfaced?
No, he's on the run. He's on the run.
He's on the lam.
Yeah. Everyone's looking for him.
Who would make a dumbass bet like that? Like, why would you?
A Florida State fan.
Why would you do that? That's so foolish, because especially in college, anything can happen. These kids get motivated all easy. And I hardly even watched college ball that much, but I happened to seen, Northern Illinois upset Notre Dame. That was a pretty big upset.
Go Huskies. 38-point underdog.
Look at that. 38 points. So, and I've seen that happen. I've seen that game. Meaning that instant happens quite often in college. These kids get all hyped up. Somebody gets hurt. There's a mistake here and there. Why would that guy do that? He deserves to eat it just for doing that. But it's so foolish. I'd be embarrassed if I was like his girlfriend, wife, or something like that. Like, you're the dog poop guy.
It was so funny. That game last Monday night, I treated it like the Super Bowl. I was so interested in it, like no other Florida State BC game. He deleted all his social media by the first quarter.
Now he's got it just tied for life? What's the deal?
And so people have actually found his whereabouts, and they're trying to come to some sort of resolution. Like maybe he has to take a sip out of a straw. Maybe he has to chew it. Maybe he has to lick some dog crap that's like dried up.
He's got it.
The resolution is you do what you said you would do.
If you're a man of word. If you have integrity. In fact, Tucker Carlson put out a message that I sent you.
Even Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, is getting involved.
The wildest I'm speechless to why he would even say that. He's got to man up. He's got to just do it and then go throw up real quick.
Yeah,
or else he'll never be able to live it down.
If you're a real Florida State fan,
you can't ever bet again.
Yeah,
you can't ever bet again.
Who trusts
so
him?
that's it. No, you can't ever bet.
I wouldn't
can't ever bet.
take
There's his
action.
light. Yeah, so he's got to do it, and he'll gain even more. He'll be disgusting, but he'll gain even more respect from people.
Right. Mario, Sunday afternoon, you were there for game 1 of the Jim Harbaugh era. The LA Chargers beat the Raiders, but is it time we call it Fight Stadium? There seem to be chingazos going on in every section.
Well, there's always fights between Raiders and Chargers fans, but it seemed to be next level. And I'm thinking to myself, and I'm sitting there and I'm watching all these because I was in a suite and I got to see I was looking above, and so I'm looking at all these and I'm thinking, yo, it's expensive to get in here. Yeah. Why are you gonna fight to get kicked out? You spend all that money, parking, the tickets to buy a michelada or whatever. It's expensive. Why are you going to go through all that and then get kicked out? And they were starting early, like in the first half. I'm like, this is so foolish. It's the weirdest move. But that always happens. It's just, excuse me, I thought that would calm down once it starts affecting their wallet. So Friday, I went to the Dodgers game and took my boys. I mentioned this because we've been having a damn ridiculous heat wave. First pitch, it was 94 degrees at 7 o'clock. When the first pitch hit, and it was nice. The sun went out. I'm having a cold margarita. It's going down well. I don't drive, by the way. Everybody thinks because I'm drinking. I'm not driving with my boys while I'm drinking. So they're all, how are you drinking and driving? I'm like, really?
If I don't drive.
Like, really? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to make Sonny. He's going to drive. So that was a good time. I got to see my neighbor, Shohei Ohtani, hit yet another home run. My dude's the first 45 player. He truly is special. 45 home runs, 45 stolen bases. And now he's at 46. I think he's going to get 50-50. That's going to be incredible. No one's ever done that again. And then Sunday, got to see the Chargers in the Harbaugh era began. The Raiders, who looked pretty tough defensively, with Crosby coming out. And I was like, oh, gosh, this is going to be interesting. But Harbaugh, he's methodical, stuck to the run, didn't give it up. The defense looked tight. First time we didn't have Herbert ever having to rescue us. And I read an interesting stat. When they keep their opponents 20 points or less, he's 18 or 19-0 in winning games. So I like what I saw. I like the running backs. I do miss me some Keenan Allen. I felt like we could have maybe
they have no one to throw to outside.
I was going to say
consistently. They really don't.
I know that's might be the Achilles heel.
Ladd
That's what's killing me.
McConkey's a nice
Did you see the game at all? Did you see the game?
Ladd McConkey.
What were your thoughts on the game?
Very methodical. Look, I think these offenses take longer to get started nowadays because nobody really plays in the preseason. There used to be a time in week 1 they would at least have 3/4 of real football, of the starters. Yeah. Now it's like, go play football. I don't agree with that. Old school coaches will tell you need to get hit in August to be ready for September. So,
do you like what you saw?
Yeah, but again, who are they throwing to? Ladd McConkey is a nice, clever slot receiver. But who's the Keenan Allen? Who's even the Mike Williams?
I know.
I don't think Quint Johnson is. I think he might be a bust. I hate to say it because I know he's a number 1 pick. He's only a second-year guy. He's shown no real indications he's going to be a frontline NFL receiver. But if J.K. Dobbins is healthy, he will rush for 1,200 yards.
He looked good, huh?
Him and Gus the Bus Edwards, they know that system. They're good downhill runners. They'll do a good job.
He ended up getting like 135 yards.
And
so that was nice.
I love the fact that the Raiders and Chargers looked at the stands and they got into their own chingazos. That was fun.
No, that was fun. All right,
day.
But you did like what you saw, so okay.
Well, they're 1-0. That's the type of game they would have lost with Staley.
Well, I was just going to say, that's normally the type of games we lose, but it seems like Harbaugh really was a factor. By the way, we only allowed 10 points.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Mario, rest in peace to truly a legend, an iconic actor, one of the great distinctive voices of all time. James Earl Jones passed away today. It was announced at the age of 93.
The voice of Mufasa, of course, Darth Vader, and was in Field of Dreams. He played a fighter too, I believe, in the movie.
Supposed to be Jack Johnson.
Great White Hope. He was a fighter too. Yeah, ironically, tip of the hat too. He was also a veteran. He fought in the Korean War.
Did he really? I didn't know.
Fought in the Korean War. Then got into acting. Ended up on Broadway. And the rest is history. But definitely one of the greatest pipes of all time.
This is CNN.
Most powerful pipes, I would say. Like Morgan Freeman's got great pipes. Liev Schreiber. But it's all bass, and it just it's just resounding.
Everything the sun touches is ours.
That's my Mufasa. And then Luke, I mean, he's a
This
legend.
is CNN.
Yeah,
That's
I know
another
you
one.
watch that, but that's all right.
Yeah, I used to long time ago when they had Fred Hickman and Nick Charles. Mario, what's your favorite movie that he was in?
Freaking Star Wars.
Really?
How can
Never
you
got to see him though. Remember that? It was his voice.
Well, I know. Well, you said he was in it.
My favorite, believe it or not, is Field of Dreams when he played Terrence Mann. I still remember that scene when Kevin Costner thinks he's driving away. And he just goes, "Moonlight Graham."
Yeah.
And the chemistry that him and Costner had that movie was spectacular.
Sandlot Kids too. Remember he was in the Sandlot.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Yes, he was the one with the big dog. He had the dog at the end.
Oh, he was a mean
Exactly, and the
old
ball
guy,
went
yeah.
over. Yeah, come on.
All right, but anyway, what a legendary career. Lived a full life.
Tip
at
of the hat
age
to him.
of 93. And Mario, you will be there at UFC 306. Get a full ringside report. I'll be watching the
Octagon side.
I'll be watching some of the boxing in between a lot of college football. All right, well, that's it for this week's edition of the 3 Knockdown Rule, brought to you by Hustler Casino. We just want to remind you again, if you want to sponsor our show, email us info@boxbid.io. So on behalf of Mario Lopez, Smoking Tim Frazier, and Tino on the edit, goodbye, everybody.